Breakfast blends are awesome.
Welcome back to Breakfast Blend. Then they are awesome.
Kind of made that one weird. Sorry.
No. What? No, that was awesome. Shit.
Shit.
What up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Breakfast Blend, where Brandon and I are going to be fucking shitting on your cereal with our emotions.
Absolutely. We're just gonna pour a little bit of our terrifying emotions into your coffee for you. Not
There
a
you go.
problem.
Yeah.
And today we have decided that we're gonna embrace the dad of Dad Man Dude. And we're gonna make this particular one about being a dad, about things that we go through in everyday life, including most recently all the way back to who knows where. But
So you're talking about the shit that we know nothing about.
correct. The thing that everybody said there was going to be like a handout or a sheet on, and yeah, we didn't get that. So we're still trying to figure that out.
Yeah, somebody skipped me. I don't.
Yeah,
I didn't get the
yeah,
forms.
yeah. I probably wasn't in school that day.
I'm okay. Look. Look. I went and saw my daughter's aerial show yesterday, right? And I've been a father for 13 years, bro. 13.
I've been a father for 18 and almost a half
Oh
years.
shit. Yeah, I forgot you had an older one. Yeah.
Yeah.
Damn, that's crazy,
To
dude.
introduce a new, not new, he's been around for a while, but I haven't really talked about him much. But my son Jeremy is 18 years old. He still lives in Maryland with his mom. And yeah, like 18 years, man. Like the being old enough to go buy a pack of cigarettes and vote and I don't know, go into the military and stuff like that. That makes me feel really old.
Like that fucks with you.
Oh God.
Okay, let me ask you this.
I
Let
have
me
a
ask you this.
full-grown adult
You
that I
do.
made.
Yeah, yes, you do. You do. Okay, let me ask you this. Because so I didn't grow up with my biological father. Like obviously my stepfather is the one that really stepped in and he was more of like my father figure. But let me give you this, like, because obviously you didn't grow up with Jeremy, right? Or at least like Jeremy wasn't like 100% of the
He
time
wasn't
with you.
full-time with
Right.
me.
That's what I
It
meant.
was
Like he
split
grew up
back and
with
forth.
you. Right.
And
But
let's be honest here. Like I was not the epitome of excellence of a father to my son.
fair enough. Fair enough. Okay, but let's get into that, right? Because one of the things that I had a hard time with as a grown up is that I didn't know how to cope with the fact that my father wasn't around. Right. So, and honestly, like I didn't have a problem with it growing up. I had a problem with it once I had kids. Um, that's when it like really hit me. And I was just like, why can't a father want to reach out and engage with their kids? Right. So now I'm kind of presenting that question to you as to like, what kind of things did you do in order to like stay connected? And then, how do you feel like that relationship has been? And how do you think it would have been different had you been involved 100% of the time? If it would have been different.
Well, and kind of a lot of points there, but I will say I have a lot of regrets when it comes to some of the things. Some of the things that maybe I feel like I could have fought more for
Okay.
as it was going on. I mean, there was a little bit of a stretch where probably so when he was born, um, we were all together. I believe he was almost two um, when me and his mom split up, but I was still pretty regularly around. Then it was, on and off here and there. There was a period of time when I was just working. Like,
Hmm.
don't get me wrong. I should not have chosen work over my son, but I was literally working like 7 days a week. Um, and I didn't see him for a while. Went through a bunch of child support issues, wound up locked up over it a couple times. Just for like not showing up to court or not paying it on time. I mean, Maryland's pretty ruthless about that to begin with.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um, and then just overall in general, I feel like I was kind of around, not really around. But then things kind of took a change, and like I will say, um, probably he had to have been about 6, and that's the first time he came here to Connecticut.
Mhm.
Um, and I wound up getting custody of him. A bunch of stuff I won't go into on here, but I wound up getting custody of him for a period of time. Um, and I felt like our relationship started to change then.
Mhm, mhm,
Um, and it got a lot better.
mhm.
Then he did wind up, his mom wound up getting custody back. Um, I don't know, a couple months later. Um, and then, but still, we kept in better contact. Not great, but better contact. And then, right around the point where where my grandparents passed away, I feel like mine and his relationship, he had to be like 12 or 13. And then mine and his relationship really took back off. I was going to Maryland all the time. Um, he started to come up here. Uh, we were flying him back and forth for a while. Um, it was just really kind of good, and I to this day I think it's good.
So
Um,
let me ask you this because like you definitely touched on a lot of topics that and by the way, like I should have asked you before I even like dove into this. Like, are you okay with talking about this?
some of it I do want to talk about it because I think there's some stuff that I gotta say out loud
Yeah.
about it and kind of be a little critical of myself. But at the same time, maybe, you know, from my point of view a little bit.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No,
So,
and
um,
you take this wherever you think is best, obviously for you and your situation. Um, like I'm curious, right? Because you mentioned that your first like your relationship didn't really kick off into another level until he was 12 or 13, right? Which is
right,
probably around the time when I met him
right.
in Texas. But either way, like, with that connection of 12 and 13, do you think it was because of the circumstances or do you think it was because of the age, right? Where he was maybe more open to having that connection with you because like as a kid you really don't understand what it's like to have a connection, you kind of just go with the flow, but I think as a teenager, you start to kind of guess and kind of figure out like, well, do I want to have an engagement with this person? So do you think it was a combination of those two? Do you think it was something else? Like, what was
I
the factor
definitely
that?
I definitely think it was a combination of the 2.
Okay.
So, I think it was a combination of, um, I mean, he's lived with his mom other than, I don't know, I had custody of him 2 times, I think,
Mhm, mhm, mhm,
for different reasons. Um, I I don't I'm not going to say that we didn't have the relationship earlier on, but I think he definitely was looking for it more once
mhm,
he was 13, 14.
mhm.
And I think there was also a certain amount of wanting to see what his mom told if what his mom told him was true.
Oh, okay, okay. So he wanted to kind of validate.
Because I'm not gonna sugarcoat it, but I'm not gonna bash my son's mother either. She had told him some things that were not exactly true a
Mhm.
couple of times that had caused some, not anything crazy, nothing like that, but like, you tell a kid that their dad moved away and doesn't care about you, then
Yeah.
that's detrimental to them on a mental health state.
No,
Um,
absolutely.
but I will say, like, um, my son is a cool ass kid. Like, he has, he's definitely struggled through some of the stuff. He's dealt with his own battles with mental health and different things like that, but I can tell you, like, he's motivated to make sure that he's in a good place.
Mhm, mhm,
So, like, I'm happy about that. There's a lot of other little pieces and parts to the whole thing where I think he really kind of had to he had to grow up without me around 100% of the time, which you could tell that bothers him.
Yeah.
But at the same time, he's not willing to just push me away because of it. Does that
Is he
make
is
sense?
Yeah, 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 absolutely, absolutely. So, and the reason why I asked this is because, like, again, I'm looking at it from the Jeremy side of things, right? Because that's basically like the circumstance that I had with my father, right? Like,
Right.
and I didn't really have the connection with him.
But I will tell you this, COVID really helped out with our relationship a lot. We
How
played
so?
video games. We played video games. We played Call of Duty like
Okay.
every other day, all the time. And because it became like I thought the game was fun to begin with. He played the game, and then it's like, okay, let's jump into a match online, and we could play video games and just try chat the whole time. Like we would
Mhm.
talk about the game, we would talk about 1,000 different things. But I can tell you, I feel like that's where me and him really bonded
Mhm.
to get to where we are today.
That's awesome.
Which that
Okay.
sounds weird, but I don't know.
No, no, no.
But
It truly doesn't sound weird, man. Like, here's the thing. Like, the way that I see it is that you build these connections with, with people in different parts of your life, right? And obviously, you didn't have the opportunity to really build that bond with your son because of the different variables that were in play, right? Some of them you're open to discussing here, some of them you're not, which is
right.
perfectly fine. Um, but I
Most of them are my own damn fault, I'm not gonna lie.
well, and here brings my next topic, because I think that, like, we as males, right, or dad figures, we usually don't talk about this shit, right? But, like,
No.
like, we
I
we
can tell
don't.
you I rarely talk about this to anyone.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Like, but we, like, the one thing that I'm always afraid of is that whether or not I am a good dad, right? Like, I'm constantly
I
questioning
struggle
that.
with that. I struggle with that all the time. I feel like I screwed up when it comes to him, which pushes me to try to overdo it with Paisley, and then I feel like I screw up on there as well.
Yeah, so you're just kind of like
So
at
I'm
a
like
at a
I'm
loss
fighting.
loss.
I feel like I'm fighting myself sometimes
Yeah, yeah.
because like I'm like, dude, you can't like you just got to learn from the mistakes. You don't have to rewrite them.
Mhm.
You know what I
Mhm.
mean? Like,
Yeah.
and I will say, like, there have been a lot of pieces. I can say, like, I had a crazy childhood. My dad wasn't around for a long time. Kind of a similar thing. Um, but there wasn't like with me and Jeremy's situation, at least from my side, there wasn't a lot of drugs involved. There wasn't, you know, it wasn't as bad, but
Mhm.
I definitely feel like I felt like I was starting to follow down the same footsteps as my dad,
Mhm.
which led me to like this whole that's part of why I moved, to get out from under my own shadow
Yeah, 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 yeah.
and go do something that I knew I needed to do, which was get away from everything and just become a normal human being again.
So let me ask you this: like, if we were to ask Jeremy today, right? Like,
Yep.
if he thought that you were a good father, what do you think he would say?
I think he would say yes.
Okay.
Um But I think the way he looks at it, because our relationship, I think, is a little bit different than a traditional father son relationship.
Uh huh.
Like, we talk about things more than I ever have with my dad.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
I think the space forces us to have conversation,
Hmm.
and I think I never once get off the phone feeling like I didn't want to be on the phone.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Because when
Yeah.
we talk, we really talk about stuff because we don't see each other face to face as often. It's not a everyday, I walk in the door from work and he's doing his homework, or well, now he's coming walking in the door from work.
Right. Right.
Because he's not in school anymore. And I struggle with the fact that he's not in school anymore because it makes me feel old over and over again. It all just makes me feel old. But like, so we have conversations like most recently. One of the cool things, so he installs windows and doors, um, and he went out and bought a bunch of his own tools. And this kid was, I mean, I have seen this kid this excited, but it's typically about sneakers or video games. You know what I mean? Maybe
Yeah,
football.
yeah, 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 yeah,
But he was like he was talking to me like he was the cat's ass for having some tools, you know what I mean? But
yeah,
I think it's awesome that he wants to share that kind of stuff with me. He wants to share his wins where like he's worked hard, he's saved a bunch of his money so he could go buy the tools that he needed and not buy crappy tools. Like he bought really decent tools that's going to last him for a long time. And if he, and if he's definitely applying himself at work. So it's little stuff like that where when he has a win, whether it's mentally, physically, or he's just sharing those things back and forth with me.
yeah.
And I can honestly say, like, I've done a lot of stuff in my life, and I never call my dad and talk about it with him.
So I was gonna say this. So like, like I think that you're giving yourself very little credit because like I think that that right there, tells you that you actually are a good father, right? Like the fact that your kids are willing to reach out to you and tell you a story or tell you what happened to them. I think that that is a sign of being a good father. I've been questioning that a lot, through the years, right? Because like I'm really sensitive to that shit because I don't want to be a bad father. And that's not to say that my biological father was a bad father. He just was a father that didn't reach out. And at the time, I took it as somebody that didn't give a shit. So if he didn't give a shit, why should I give a shit type of thing?
Well,
Um,
and dude, like, I will say that there are times where and sorry, dad, if you wind up watching this, but there are times where like the stuff that went on between me and my dad and in our lives together, I kind of wish my dad wasn't around.
yeah, 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 yeah.
So like it's not always best, I think. Like I
Mm-hmm,
don't think the typical stereotype of things really is in play anymore.
mm-hmm,
Just in society in general. And like I can tell you that when the few years I most of the time from the time I was like 5 till I don't know, I was probably like 12 or 13. I didn't even know where my dad was. I didn't
mm-hmm,
talk to him.
mm-hmm.
I didn't know if he was dead, alive. I had no idea. Never heard from him. Birthdays,
Like for
Christmas,
for
nothing.
for for all you know, he's still out getting the milk.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
For a good portion of time, probably a solid 10 years of my life.
Wow. Yeah, that's
Um,
that's a pretty big gap.
yeah, but it was probably the most drama free part of my life, my part of my childhood.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
Because before when he was around, my mom had her own drama that came with her, and then my dad had his drama that came with him, and I was always stuck somewhere in between the two. And then he kind of pieced out and was gone. So I just had my mom's drama to deal with, which
right, right.
was kind of easy. I just went to my grandmother's house. Like
Mm-hmm.
that was it. And then there was no drama.
Yeah.
So I did that for a long time. And then kind of right in between middle school and high school, my dad just showed back up.
Mm-hmm.
And then the drama kind of started again.
So
It was
you're almost
great for like a month and a half.
that's what I was gonna say. So it sounds like, like to you, like, and I don't know if I'm reading too much into it, but it sounds like you're more of the type of, like I have less drama when you're not around. Maybe just keep your distance and I'll let you know if I need you type of thing.
I have a very different relationship with my dad.
Mhm.
My dad's not a mean dude. He's
Yeah, yeah.
not like I don't want at least the viewers at home to get the wrong impression. He's not. He makes really shitty decisions.
Mhm.
Like he picks drugs over his kids regularly. Not so much anymore. Um, Now I think the biggest change is when I stopped expecting the regular father-son relationship with my dad,
Mhm.
and I stopped expecting something from him that I was never gonna get. Does that
Right.
make sense?
Yeah, yeah,
So
absolutely.
now our relationship, like, I love my dad. He's my
Mhm.
dad. Like, there's no taking that away. I love him. I care about him. I feel like the dude, because of all the years of, doing whatever and, between drugs and just dumb shit, like, I feel like the guy's fallen apart at, like, 60 years old.
Mhm.
Um, you know, I'm waiting to hear back now to find out if he has lung cancer. Um, but I keep my dad close enough that I'll never lose him,
Mhm.
but far enough away that I don't think he can hurt me anymore.
Yeah, 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 yeah,
Does
yeah,
that
yeah.
like and it's a very strange thing to do, but I'm telling you, it's the most comfortable relationship I've ever had with my dad. And it's starting on my side with what my expectations are
Yeah,
versus waiting for him to change and be something that he's never gonna be. You know what I mean?
right, right.
Um, which I mean, and me and him have talked about that in depth. And
Mhm.
he's very apologetic. He's cleaned himself up for the most part. I don't think he's really doing any kind of crazy drugs or anything now. Um, but I think it's kind of already done the damage, if that
Would
makes
you
any sense.
would you say that you have the same relationship that Jeremy has with you as you
No,
have with your father? Okay,
no.
okay.
And that's the key for me
Yeah.
is so I look back on it and I'm thankful that I grew up in the childhood that I did. Like I wouldn't really want to go back and change it. I
Right,
don't
right,
think
right. Yeah, yeah.
because it's all the sum of my experience is is who I am today.
Mhm.
So that's where it's like I felt like he gave me a lot of lessons. I felt like mine and his relationship definitely helped guide me through my relationship with Jeremy.
Mhm.
You know, the never want to give up, never, constantly do whatever it takes to try to be around and be a part of his life in whatever way we can come up with.
Right.
Like where I don't think he really ever thought of it that way, my dad.
Yeah.
Um but at the same time, like I feel like he's made a lot of mistakes, so I kind of know what to avoid.
That
Does
makes
that make
sense.
sense?
No, no, that makes perfect sense.
And I
That
feel
makes
like
perfect sense.
both of my parents were really like that, where both of them screwed stuff up so bad that I know certain pieces and parts that I refuse to screw up on my end.
Mhm.
Um, like I I I know we've discussed different things on our other platform, other channel, or other show there, Uncut. But I'm I do like bourbon, but I'm not an everyday drinker. Like I
Yeah,
don't
yeah, yeah.
drink all the time. Where my mom, she drank every single day, no matter what. So like that's kind of always I've always kind of distanced myself from alcohol. I've always kept it around because I know that I'm strong enough to deal with it, but I kind of distance myself. Like if I start like getting into it, then I'm like, let me take a little back seat here for a little while.
And you do that because you don't want to dabble in any of the situations that they were in. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay. Yeah, 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 yeah.
And then
Yeah.
I have well, for a lot of reasons, but um the two of them kind of gave me a huge fear of opioids or
Mhm.
opiates in general, just because of some of their issues. And just that lifestyle. Like I
Yeah.
knew I didn't want it.
Yeah, yeah,
You know
yeah,
what I
yeah.
mean? Like
Yeah,
I,
yeah.
I knew I didn't want to live that. So I don't know. It's kind of just pushed me to do other things and figuring out that I don't need any of them to do anything different
Mhm.
was kind of a big turning point for me on that.
Yeah.
Like the relationship with my son, I have the rest of my life and his life to get it right. And I'm not going to forget that because I feel like once I got to an age and I felt like I didn't need anything from my dad anymore, I felt like he stopped trying for a while.
Yeah, 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 yeah,
You know what I
yeah.
mean? I feel like he was like, "Oh, okay, he got over it. We're good."
Mhm.
And then just went about his life.
Mhm.
Um, but that's not really the case. So, that's where constantly I've been trying to do a bunch of different things, and me and him have talked about doing a bunch of different things. He's gonna take vacation time from work, come up and see us, hang out for a little while, and we're gonna get back to that now that kind of all the traveling issues have subsided. So we're gonna get back in the swing of things with that, and he's excited, I'm excited, and we just want to hang out, you know?
No, and I think that's really good, man. Like, like I'm like I had kind of like the same childhood as well. Where again, my father wasn't around, and there's a long story behind it, which it could be for another episode. But like again, like for me, like we just became so disconnected that I don't really know him anymore. Like I mean, like I know him, but I don't know him, right?
Right.
And like for me, it's one of those situations where my kids became the most important thing. So then I was like, if you don't care to reach out to me, at least care to reach out to see my kids, right? Um, and the reason why I'm like even bringing this up during this whole cycle is because I want to kind of touch base on what we talked about earlier, which was whether or not you're a good father or a bad father, right?
Right.
So I constantly question my father, like my fatherhood all the time, right? Like I'm always like, am I doing the right thing? Am I being a right example? Am I being a good person? All these other things. And a lot of times, like honestly, man, like I struggled for a long time to really feel like a good father because there are things that I have weaknesses on, right? Like it's crazy because like on a professional level, I am really good at keeping appointments. I know everything that's happening. I know everything that I need to do. Everything like lives in my head. Like I know that I have to be at a certain place at 2 p.m. and that I have to do X, Y, and Z before I have to do it at 3 p.m. When it comes to functions that involve my kids, I'm terrible at them, dude. Like I am terrible at knowing when there is like a parent teacher conference. I'm terrible at knowing when a doctor's appointment is coming up. Like, and all those, like, I used to take into consideration, and I used to think that I was a bad father because I didn't know those. Um, and again, it was because I was measuring what I thought was the right thing to measure by. Um, but I'm curious to know how you measure whether or not you're a good father.
That's a tough one because I feel very similar to where you're at.
Mm.
Um, I would say that I'm very good professionally at making same thing. It just lives in my head,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah.
But then when it comes to my kid stuff, both of them, I, it's like it get the information gets pushed back out of my head by something else that's going on.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's not on purpose, it's not intentional. Thank God for calendars. Google
Right.
Calendars has saved my life,
Yes.
literally,
Yes. Yes.
on some of that stuff. Um, and I think the other thing is, um, that thought of, and I think this is the part that I don't really talk about is the disappointments that I have gone through
Mhm.
forced me to try to be different now.
Like the
So,
disappointments that you had, like, as a child?
yeah.
Okay, yeah.
So, and let me explain. There's a quick story as to that.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, go for it.
and Lacey makes fun of me for this. Every single time that I have to pick Paisley up from school, um, there's pick up and drop off. You gotta go pick them up and do what you got to do, right? Well, I show up probably 40 minutes early, and I'm
Mm.
the first car in line
Why?
because I want when my kid walks out of the school to see my car,
Yeah, 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 yeah.
because I was the kid that I got left at school
Mhm.
like a lot as a
Yeah.
kid.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Like either my mom wound up working late and didn't call and tell my grandmother so she could come pick me up, or my mom lost track of time.
So you don't
My
you don't
dad was
want
supposed to be there and never showed up or whatever. Like, so
yeah,
I just don't want my kid to go through that same feeling,
that makes sense, man,
or I
and
don't want my kid to go through the feeling of, oh, they're at Paisley's at softball practice, or when Jeremy was in school, Jeremy's at football practice, and where's dad? I have no idea.
mhm, mhm.
You know
Yeah.
what I mean?
Yeah.
And then either late or you got to ride home with somebody or this or that. No, like I'm there all the time. So
That's
it's
interesting.
it's changed how I prioritize that stuff.
Uh-huh.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, not necessarily in a bad way. I think there's times where I overdo it,
Mhm.
but I'd rather overdo it than underdo it.
Yeah, yeah. I get
You know
it.
what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
So that's where, like, I don't know, like, I think that that's not necessarily, it doesn't really answer your question, but there's little things that help me prove to myself that I'm not like it's like a line that I draw in the sand that say I'm not going to do that ahead of time. You
No,
know,
and that does answer the question, honestly, because those are the things that I've also kind of developed for myself. Like there are these like they're like my own, KPIs, right? They're like my own, key performance indicators, right? Where like I go, okay, well, if Alex is happy and he doesn't feel like he's neglected, or he doesn't feel like he's not getting, the attention that he deserves, or if he feels that like he's not getting 100% me, then I'm okay, right? And it's the same thing, like, like the variables are different for Izzy as well, right? Because she has different needs. So I've learned to kind of put those areas of measurement for myself as well. But I can tell you that like there are several days where I don't feel like I'm a good father.
right?
Like I would
And
say
I
probably the majority of the time I don't feel like I'm a good father. But when I take a step back and look at the things that I do as a father, like I go, okay, that's good father shit. But I don't feel like a good father.
right. I
Does that
never
make
have
sense?
those aha moments saying, "Yeah, that's right. I'm a good dad."
Right.
But at the same time, you're constantly chasing that dragon, right?
Right. Like like
Yeah,
like if you like if you right, like if you were to describe what a good father was, the shit that you're doing are the things that would be included in that
right.
list, right? But for some odd reason, I
Well,
have a hard time.
it's like the way that like it's no secret. I'm not that old. Jeremy was born when I was 18.
Mhm.
So what I could provide at 18 versus what I could provide at 26 for Paisley,
Was way
night
different.
and day different.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, and that's just, and I'm not even talking about solely monetarily.
Mhm.
I'm talking about generally my outlook on life is completely
No,
different.
your emotions are way different. I mean, shit, when you're 18 years old, like you're still trying to figure out, how to make it in the world by yourself,
Dude,
let alone carrying somebody else's life with you.
I'm looking back on it right now, and like, because me and Jeremy talk so much about what goes on in his life, I kind of have an idea.
Mhm.
Well, I'm thinking about it now, and I'm like, every time he brings something up, I have that thought that runs through my head of, well, kid, if this is what you're talking about, you ain't seen shit yet.
Right, right.
You know
Yeah,
what I
yeah.
mean?
Yeah.
Like, just wait, just wait. But then on the flip side, I'm like, I had him when I was his age.
Mhm.
So I'm like, fuck. Like,
Mhm.
so I really, I don't know. I'm not saying that being young parents you can't do it, but I think it has a bigger effect than people give it credit for.
I
Um,
I I agree.
raising a child.
I
Um,
agree.
I would not give him up for anything. I would
Mhm.
not give Paisley up for anything. Like, there's nothing I would do. Like, there's no nothing that would make me give up on my kids. But at the same time, um, I do kind of wish that I was mentally at least a little more prepared for the situation when Jeremy was born, because I feel like he got the dry run,
Mhm.
and then I had it a little better figured out when I walked into it after that.
Right, right.
Just, and dude, I'm telling you, if you want to talk about little things that prove that I'm a good dad, some of this stuff is weird that I look at, like making sure that our electricity never gets shut off.
Right. Yeah, 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 yeah.
Because I remember plenty of times where our electricity was shut off for a week and a half because the money wasn't there.
Mhm.
Not having to constantly move from apartment to apartment to apartment to apartment, having
Yes.
stability in the in the home setting
Mhm.
of, you've pretty much grown up in maybe, one or two houses, and that's where you are,
Yep.
and each one is a steady improvement on the last,
Mhm. Mhm.
and I I mean, I'll be honest. I never say no when it comes to buying either one of my kids nothing,
Mhm.
which I don't think is a good thing all the time.
Right, right.
Looking back on it, doing this and kind of reflecting on some of the stuff that I do. I mean, it's one of those things where either one of them will ask me for something, and I'll be like, okay. And then Lacey will be like, no. And I'll be like, all right. Lacey says no. And then somehow within the next 4 weeks, it happens. I just do it.
Yeah.
And then I get yelled at for it, and I'll gladly get yelled at for it every time. I don't
And
care.
that's because you have like these like built-in, memories, right? These like subconscious thoughts that you're just like, I don't want
Well, I
to,
can
I
remember
don't,
just wanting stuff when I was a
yeah,
kid, and
yeah,
you know, it it was one of two things, right? So I don't want to bash too hard because money was tight. Like
yeah,
it wasn't everybody didn't have a ton of money, and the what money they did have, they tried. Like I'm not trying to sound like a complete asshole and be like, oh, it was so terrible and they could have done so much better. But I also refuse to have my kid know what that's like.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Like I had a moment a couple weeks ago actually where just like kind of it's I have a theory that it's the same month every year. I just forget about it. Where like the month falls weird, so your paychecks fall weird, and then you just have that week where like no matter how hard you try, no matter how hard you save your money. I mean, yeah, I could always pull money out of here, there, and everywhere to make stuff happen if I have to at the drop of a dime. But like in just the regular flow of the bank account, there was a time last week where I think it was Thursday. I get paid on Friday. Thursday, and Paisley's like, "Oh, I want to go do this," and I'm like, I had to say for the first time in 10 years,
right. You gotta
I
wait.
can't right now. We got to
Yeah,
wait
yeah,
till tomorrow.
yeah.
You know,
It, it, it's funny that you bring that up, man, because I'm kind of going through that myself right now, right? Especially with the situation with not having a job, right?
yep.
Like that's one of those things that, like, I grew up poor as well. I grew up like, my mother was, the sole provider for a very long time. There were times where like, we ate very limited. Like there was like there was never a time where we went, well, shit, we don't have food for tomorrow. Never that poor, but
No,
definitely not the like
but you
for
might
us
have been
to
eating rice and beans for 2 days.
exactly. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
like,
Exactly. Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah,
and
yeah.
and I think I have to give a little bit of credit because the same thing, like I just said, where I can make stuff happen if I need to at any given time. I
Mm,
feel like our parents, especially our mothers, definitely did that too.
absolutely.
Like, I
100%.
don't wanna take too much. Like, I know my mom made a lot of mistakes, but at the same time, like, she never completely failed me.
Well, and you know
You know
what's
what I
funny?
mean?
No, absolutely. And here's the thing, like as I continue to like, grow and evolve and I understand life about a lot more, there's a lot of things now that I go like, well, fuck, my parents tried, right?
Right?
Like there's a lot of things that I end up doing that with, right? So, for me, like I definitely side with you in that circumstance where like you don't want your kids to go through the same suffering that you did. So you try to make them feel good by not putting them in that situation, right? And it's also important though, right? Like there are times where like I try to give them the lesson, right? Obviously, like now we're kind of falling into the aspect where they don't have a choice because again, I don't have a job, right? So
Right.
trying to figure that out is also a big piece for them. But this is where, like for me, this is validating whether or not I'm a good father because I see them trying to understand my situation, right? And again, like I don't put that burden on them. I don't want to like,
No, but
make them
naturally
worry.
naturally, your kids are gonna respond to the conversation, right?
Absolutely. Yeah,
Like,
yeah,
and the
yeah.
fact that your kids are responding to the conversation is almost the win out of it.
Exactly. And the thing that
That's
I'm
the proof.
well, and the thing that I'm also trying to do, right, with like my kids now is that like I'm trying to give them as much information as they're willing to accept, right? Like again, I don't like shoving like ideas down their throats. I don't like forcing anything like that. But if they're asking me, then I'm going to tell them. And I think that's one of the things that like when I was a kid, like for me it was a weird situation because I was forced to be an adult, really early on.
Mhm.
But I was also not told adult things fully, right? So I kinda
I
landed.
feel like I was very much in the same boat.
Yeah, so you kinda fall in this middle ground where you do shit because you're told to do them, but you don't know why, right? And then, like, you grow up kinda like, "Well, that's just how I did it, like, that's how we did it." And, like, now I'm looking back and I'm like, "Well, why did we do it that way?" "Oh, that's because my mom had a hard time trying to make ends meet, so she was trying to not show me that she was fucking broke at the time," right? Like,
Right.
it's things like that I look
It's
at
like on
and
Wednesdays and Thursdays, man. Wednesdays and Thursdays of my entire life, that's when we would have the most random ass shit that came out of the cabinet. That's when we would get like, and I got, God bless my mom, man. Like, she at least tried to make it fun.
yeah, my
You know
mom
what I
did too.
mean? Like,
Yeah.
looking back on it now, it's like, yeah, I'm gonna teach you how to make rice roni
Mhm.
because I think you should know how to cook.
Yeah.
And
My
it's because the box of rice roni was freaking, $1.50
Yep.
or whatever. You know what I mean? Or that's what was in the cabinet.
That's what, like, my
You
mom
know?
always had, we had, what she called a milkshake for dessert, but it was like, the cheapest ice cream that you could afford with milk, right? It was
Yeah.
just kind of like mixed in. Um, but like you're right, they did try, right? Like my mom tried. Like she would like try to put us in a place where it didn't feel so shitty. And again, now that like I'm a grown up, I understand a lot of that more. Growing up, I didn't, right? And especially with like these aspects of like the thing is that before you become a parent, you think that once you have a kid, you're gonna know what to do. And that's such a lie. You still don't know what to do. I don't know what to do today.
Right.
Right? Like, like there are situations where like, it's so funny because like and I love my kids for this. I fucking adore them because of this. Like my kids, like I'm proud of them because we've taught them that they can ask, right? And it's a gift and a curse
Yeah.
because sometimes they ask shit that I don't have an answer for, right? Um, but like, like there are times where like they go like, "Hey, can I have an ice cream?" Right? And I'll go, "No." And they're like, "Well, why not?" And then I go, "Well, because I said so," right? The traditional
Yeah.
answer.
Oh, yeah.
And my kids just go, "Well, what does that mean? Why is that?" Right? And like this is where things have changed, right? Because as a kid, I was taught that if my mom said that's what I said, that's what she said.
That
You
was
didn't
the end.
ask. That was
It
the end.
was like after that, shit starts flying in your general direction.
Right, right, right. But like
But I look at it now though, and I look at the reasoning behind that way differently. So I can distinctly remember the feeling of that, and now I understand it's probably to save her the embarrassment.
exactly.
You know what I'm
Yes.
saying? Like,
Yes.
because it was never like, I mean, don't get me wrong, she did get to a point and she was kind of fucked up all the time too. So there would be times where she was shitty about it and she's like, "No, we don't have the money." Blah blah blah.
Mhm,
Blah.
mhm,
Like, but that was very rare. I would
mhm.
say that 90% of the time it was she was just creative as shit about like changing the subject or something different or whatever.
Yeah.
I think the only time where she got really crazy, she never got that way about like food or anything like that. She would be honest and be like, "Look, we just, it's expensive. Like,
Mhm.
we got to eat this until payday."
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
which was probably too much to give to a kid, but
Mm.
at the same time, like, we kind of had a different mother son relationship because, like you said, like you're kind of forced to grow up and deal with stuff that has nothing to do with being a kid.
And that's one of those things that like now it's a weird situation, man. And I don't even know how to describe it because like I don't want my kids to go through that, but I want them to know the value of it. Right. Like
Absolutely.
it's such a weird thing because like again like I remember man like like and we've discussed this in another episode in the past right where I was embarrassed about the fact that I had free lunch right at school right and my mom tried to not make me feel bad about that right and those are the type of things that like again as parents, you're not equipped to handle. You're not given this book that says, well, if A happens, here's B to answer it, right? It doesn't happen that way. And on top of that, like it's also something that there can't be a book for because everybody's going to handle things very differently, right? Um, but
The other piece is, have you ever had it happen where the answer changes for completely different reasons than you ever thought?
absolutely, absolutely.
Because like I've had that situation where like, at this time I would have said hell no
Hmm.
for
Hmm.
this reason. But even though that I was so against it then, now I'm like, okay, you could do it
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
for an off the wall ass reason.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, there's like there's really no logic to it, right? Like it's just a feeling based reason.
Well, and I do have to just throw one thing out there because I think kind of what was thrown in our heads as how to be good parents as kids is a little different. I think that it also lasts longer than they ever made it seem like. So
Like what do you mean like
I always
parenthood?
felt like my parents, exactly, parenthood in general. Because I always felt like growing up like, oh, it's important for you to be parents to your kids until they're not kids anymore.
Yeah.
But now I see like, I mean, unfortunately my mom's no longer with us, but my dad, he's not really a huge part of my life. But like even Lacey's parents, like having them around to give that parental advice in situations sometimes where it's like it's so simple. It's never like super complicated, but it's so simple. But like having that there as even if you just use them as a sounding board to be like, I think that's a bigger part of the journey than I ever really thought until now.
You know what's funny, man? Like I'm analyzing what you're saying and you're absolutely right. Like I think once you become a parent, you never stop being a parent.
No,
Like and it's not even to your own kids, right? Like it
no,
could
it's
be
just
to
thinking with a parent brain,
yeah, yeah.
like and like so when I was younger and I was having kids, I never thought about grandkids.
Mhm.
I've just never thought about it.
Mhm.
I have an 18-year-old son. Technically, if he did the exact same thing I did, I would be a grandparent right now.
Mhm.
But I could say, Jeremy, if you watch this, I would appreciate if you just wait a couple years. But I still am excited for becoming a grandparent as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like
Yeah.
that part of it. And I don't mean the traditional where they always talk shit and say, "Oh, well, I get to have them and do whatever and then give them back." No, like I feel like I'm gonna be that grandfather that like I have my grandkids all the time,
Yep.
like for
Mhm.
no reason.
Mhm.
Just be like, nope, grandkids, mine. Let's go.
You know what's funny, man, is that like I also now that you're touching base on grandkids, right? I see my parents acting way different with my kids than they did with me. And I think it's because of that. I think it's because of the factor that like they go, okay, well, I did everything I could with this asshole. He turned out okay. Not the best, but he turned out okay. I'm gonna try to give my grandkids the best thing that they can have, right? And then like it's so funny because like my kids have a different perspective of what I have for my parents, right?
it's
Like,
it's almost hilarious because if you were to have that same conversation with Lacey, so her dad now with Paisley and even with Lacey currently is, I mean, like I've heard horror stories
mhm,
from when Lacey was like Paisley's age.
yeah, yeah,
Like they just fought.
yeah,
Like they literally like full blown attack mode. I don't think they talked to each other for like an entire year and lived in the same house.
yeah, yeah.
Like,
No,
you
dude,
know what
like,
I'm saying?
no,
But
I
like now he comes to my house every day.
yeah,
Every single day he's at my house.
yeah. No, it's
And it's just a part of life, you know what I mean? And I don't think the guy has changed a whole lot, but I think you look at it and you're like, because I know I look at it and I know like if Jeremy winds up having children, I'm going to give those kids the best side of me that I wasn't able to give to him because I didn't know how to be that yet.
Mhm, mhm.
But I
You
think
know
that's a combination of all that you get your entire life, not just when you're a kid, is what the parenting really is.
right, right, and I think that's the thing. I think that once you become a grandparent, I think that you almost get this feeling of, like, "I can't really fuck it up," right? Like, I think that's the feeling that kinda
I kept it
overcomes.
alive long enough that it
Yeah. This one made it.
recreated itself.
Yeah, this one right, right, right.
Right? Like
This one made it, and then
it
he made
lived long
more.
enough to have its own kids. So I
Right,
think I did okay.
right, right. Because, like, like, it's funny, man, like, I growing up, dude, like, this is a small example, but it's 100% real, right? When I grew up, or, like, when I was a kid, like, when my mom used to cook, she would make one meal, right? And then you ate that or you ate that. Like, that was those are the options, right? Like, there was no
Oh,
option
it
of, like,
wasn't I'm gonna go make a sandwich because
right,
I don't
right,
want what you're cooking.
yeah, and it wasn't an
It's
option
not, you
like
go to bed hungry.
exactly, yeah, but, like, and I'm using my mom in this case, because again, I grew up longer with her, but, like, both my stepdad is also like that, my father's like that, right? Um, but, like, my father and mom, like, now, like, they're to my kids, like, if my kids go, "Oh, I don't really like this." Like, my mom is quick to go, "Well, what do you want? I'll
You want a
cook you
peanut butter and
something."
jelly?
Yeah, what do you
I'll
want?
cook
Right?
you with
Like,
something
and
special
like,
for you.
and it's funny because, like, the last time I was visiting my mom, which I'm actually going to visit my parents here in a week, and it'll be awesome because I'm really looking forward to connecting with them at this level. Again, like, my perception of life has completely changed, and
Well, and dude, I wanna pause on that for
yeah,
just a second. Like, with all the things that have unfolded and all the like, I gotta say, I feel as your friend, I feel like you've experienced a growth spurt, spiritually, mentally, emotionally, um,
I have,
just
dude.
all the way around. Um, Not even so much with just the quitting your job thing, but I think that's been a progression over the last year for you.
Absolutely,
In my
absolutely.
opinion, just from where I sit.
No, no,
It
no.
may it may even be longer than that.
I
You know what
it
I'm saying?
No, and you're dead on, dude, and, like, it's funny that you mentioned that because, um, last night when I was watching my daughter's show, like, for the first time, I watched her show. Like, and again, like, I said this to Nicole last night. I said to her, "Hey, I watched her show," and Nicole kinda gave me the, "Okay, yeah, okay," right?
You've
And I'm
been to
like,
like 30 of them.
"Yeah, yeah, exactly," and then I'm like, "No, no, like, I watched her show," and then she was like, "I don't know what that means."
It's
Right? And
like I
I'm like,
didn't check my email. I didn't look at my
"Exactly."
phone. I was physically just in the moment watching my kid.
Yeah,
And I had a
I was
similar experience, just she had a band recital like a week ago.
yeah, and it's dude, it's like it's such an amazing feeling, and I've done that with, with Alex as well. Like, now when I go to his baseball games, right? Like, I'm watching the baseball game. I'm not just there because I'm the parent and I'm just like, "Woo," like, no, I'm watching the game. So my perception has definitely changed, and, like, I almost feel that, like, my parents have also gone through that growth, right? Which is why they are the way that they are, which is why now in the state that they're in, right? Like, they go, well, if I can provide for this person, why can't I, right? And I think that that's the thing that they couldn't do for us as kids, right? So then now that we have our own kids, then they go, well, I couldn't give them this when they were younger. I'm going to try to do it now, right?
Right.
And I feel that, like,
Because I truthfully believe that part of feeling like a successful parent is I get my happiness from that stuff now.
yes, yes,
You
100%,
know what I'm saying? Like,
100%.
and how that kind of ties into exactly what you're saying. I feel like, that's what it is like it's almost your parents, they're coming back and doing that for your kids. Not that they don't want to do that for your kids, but they're also doing it for you
Right.
because
Yeah.
they see that you're in a time in a period in your own life that you are living for your children.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? Like,
Yes.
because I think that happens with me a lot too, is like not so much with my parents, but like I mentioned Lacey's parents. They live right down the street. They're a big part of my life now too. But like they do stuff for my kid that I feel like they couldn't do for Lacey when they were growing up.
Mhm.
You know, or you know what I'm saying? Like
Yeah, yeah.
because they, as parents, were still growing up along the process too. And now
Mhm.
they're like, "Oh, we fucked up."
Right, right. Yeah.
So we're now that we know that your happiness comes from your child's happiness, we'll just make your kid happy.
Yes,
You
yes,
know what I mean?
yes.
Like, here's our apology letter. We're just
Right.
gonna spoil the shit out of the child,
Right.
and she's gonna live the life of right. I mean, dude, like, I just look at it like this: when it comes to Paisley and her grandfather, this dude takes her out on the boat like twice a week. I didn't ride on a boat for the first time until I was like, 10 or 12.
Mhm,
Like,
mhm,
and here's this kid out, lounging in the water on
mhm.
a tube, getting pulled behind the boat on a
Yeah.
Tuesday after school.
No, dude,
Like,
dude, my mom growing up, like, she hated taking me to the playground. She did,
mhm.
right? Like, it and she's been honest about that, and, like, I appreciate the honesty, like, but she hated going to the playground, right? And then, like, the other day, like, when I went to go visit her in Maryland, like, my dad and her took my kids to the playground. And I'm like, "I thought you hated the playground." She's like, "I do, but, like, I really love them." And, like, jokingly, like, I was just like, "Oh, okay, so does that mean you don't love me?" And then she's like,
So fuck me then, right?
right, exactly, exactly. But, like, deep down inside, like you said, right, like, you're super grateful for that, right? Because then you
Right,
go like, "Fuck," like, the one person that hated doing the thing is now doing it for the thing that's the most special to me, right?
right.
Um,
Which is almost a closer experience than them
it
doing it for
is.
you
It
directly.
is, dude. It totally is. It totally is.
It's crazy how the outlook shifts around, man.
Oh,
It really
absolutely.
does.
Absolutely, dude. Absolutely. And like, like I also feel like as you mentioned something earlier that was very important, which is you said that like once you're a parent, you're always a parent, right?
Right.
And I feel that like for the most part, like your parents or your in-laws, right, had this one up on you, right? Like
Oh, yeah.
they were like the savvy parents, right? So you always
Right.
went to them. But I think that there's a stage in your life that you hit where you become the parent. Does that
You
make
get
sense?
you get moved up. Like,
Yeah.
you graduate into
You,
their level, and
y-
then you start, like, it's like you can hang out with the cool kids now.
yes, yes,
'Cause
right?
I'm 100% with you, as I feel like that now is, like, I can honestly tell you, um, of all of my friends that I have, I talk to you the most, probably. Um, I talk to my son, and then I talk to my father-in-law.
Yeah.
Like, that's in order of, how often I talk to my friends, which makes
And
me a
I'm
horrible friend. But at the same time, like, I talk to him and I feel like we're equals now. You know
yeah,
what I mean? I feel
yeah,
like I've gotten the nod that I'm in the big leagues.
yeah,
And now I get to
exactly.
sit at the cool kids table and we talk about how our kids are done.
Yeah, exactly. Like it's like because like
Even though I
like
am one of them.
right, right, right. Because you're like like before you hit that stage, right? Like if you could be watching baseball, right, or you could be watching football, right, and then you go, well, fuck, like that should have been a pick six. Like, they shouldn't have ran that play. And I'm using that as like a really loose example. But then like your father-in-law would be like, nah, that wasn't it. That wasn't what they were gonna do. Nope, you're wrong there, right? But then it becomes like that level where then like you say that and then they go, yeah, I was thinking the same thing. That is what they were gonna do. You're right.
Right.
Like you said, you almost get validated that you belong at that table. And again, that example is such a broad, minimal example. I'm talking about more meaningful stuff, but
Yeah, but
um,
it is meaningful though.
yeah,
You
yeah,
know what
yeah,
I'm
yeah,
saying? In its
yeah.
own weird way. Like, so my father-in-law, I have gotten my father-in-law to start watching golf on TV.
Mm-hmm.
And now there's not a time that I see him that we don't talk about golf.
Right. Yeah,
You
yeah,
know what
yeah,
I mean? And
yeah.
he's like, "Oh, you were right. This person is definitely they're already moving up. They're
Mm-hmm.
they're going to finish out the weekend strong."
Mhm,
you know,
mhm.
top 10, top 15. Like, did you see that putt?
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's kind of
No.
hilarious.
No, it is, dude. It is. Like I had a similar experience yesterday as well, right? So again, I didn't have the opportunity to really talk to, like so my father-in-law lives here in Colorado. We probably see him like once a month, if that. Like we used to see him a lot more. But obviously like life happens, things, all that good stuff. But like I didn't really get a chance to talk to him about my life decision of quitting and like not having anything. And then yesterday we saw him, right? And like immediately, like I was just like, fuck, like he's probably gonna like tear me apart because, again, right? Like I quit my job without having anything and I, have his grandkids, his daughter that I have to take care of, like all these things, right? And like I'm sitting there with him and I was like clenching, right? Like I was preparing myself for him to go, that was fucking stupid. I don't know why you did that, right? Like that's what I was expecting.
And honestly, like knowing your father-in-law, that's what I would expect. I would expect there to at least be a mention of that conversation.
Yeah, yeah. And
Like,
and
so
dude,
dumbass, when you get another job?
right, right. And dude, it was so refreshing because that's not what I got. Like what I got from him was like he was like, I could not have done it that way because that's not the way that I think. He's like, but kudos to you for standing up for what you believe in, right? And like that to me was my graduation
I probably
into
would have cried.
his level, right? Like you see what I'm saying? Like like that's where I think that he finally allowed me to like be a parent. Does that
Well,
make
it's
sense?
it's it's like he's accepting. Like, you could tell it's when they get to the point where, like, okay, they're good.
Yeah,
They got
yeah,
it.
yeah, exactly. Like they're gonna
If he
live.
if he made the decision, it was worth it.
Right, right,
I've seen him
right.
make other decisions before, and this isn't a dumb one.
Right. No, dude, exactly, exactly. And like that to me is like
That's the ultimate acceptance.
it is, and it's very cool to see, right? Because like, again, like growing up your entire life where you don't get that, right? All of a sudden you see that and you're like, well, and for your own ego, right? You end up going like, well, fuck, maybe I am doing something right, right? Like you kind of get happy about it.
Oh yeah.
So like to me, kind of bringing it back full circle, that is one level of validation for me, right? Is to see how other grandparents see me, right? And I'm not talking about grandparents as in like, like your
Well, I'm
mom's
starting
father or father's father. I'm talking about grandparent, meaning like they're the ones that have all the knowledge, right? And you're just a pawn to them. Like once they welcome you into that grandparent level, like you almost feel like, okay, well, I made it. I
right.
made it.
Like, oh, this is what it's like in here. They have their
Yeah.
own. They have
Yeah.
their own music and everything.
Right. Exactly. Right. Exactly. Damn, they got a microwave. Shit. Right.
Right.
Like, yeah. Like that's
It's like
exactly
in the background, they're playing the "Moving On Up" theme song.
exactly. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Like
Moving
that's
on up.
no, dude, like that's exactly how I feel about it. And like again, it's a cool progression to see. And I'm almost at that stage in my life where like I'm looking forward to me being able to do that with my own kids. Right?
Oh yeah.
Me reaching that level where I can go, "You made it, you little fuck." Right? Like
Well,
that's
and I will say that being that Jeremy is now an adult, I have a little bit of that feeling.
right.
You know, like that's one of those things where, like, all right, the kid made it. He's got a job.
Right, right.
All right. All right. Like, I notice our conversations have changed a little bit too, because it's all right, you're a man now.
Mhm.
If you
Mhm.
don't want to talk to me, you don't have to.
Yeah. Yeah,
You
yeah,
know what I
yeah.
mean? Like,
Yeah, yeah.
and no longer do you really, I mean, should you listen to what I have to say? Yeah. And I feel like I'm less forceful, but I outline different things differently now that he's an adult.
Mm.
You know what I'm saying? Like, I definitely think that's changed. So I'm kind of like, I'm showing him the other side exists, and then down the road we'll let him in when we've determined he's gotten enough experience.
Right, right, right. Like, so he's now at that stage where like you're
Like
kind of
he gets to
watching.
find out that a different level exists.
Right. Yeah, 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 yeah. But no, man, like, like to me, that's very cool. And again, like, I don't think that, a lot of dads talk about the fear factor of failing, right? Like,
Dude. I mean,
like,
and it doesn't go away either.
no, 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 it
Like,
doesn't.
and I think so. I think that's part of it too that I want to mention. Like, I think if I didn't have the fear, that's when I would know I completely fucked up.
Right. Yes.
You know what I mean?
100%. 100%. Yes.
I think that's the indicator, the main indicator for me
Hmm.
is that I don't want to stop.
Right.
You know what I
Yes.
mean? Like
Yes.
it just is what it is, and that's why like I will say I back to circle back to a previous point, but it's why I do some of the stuff the way that I do it now is finding out like the things that were important to me as a kid. I try to sprinkle those in there with my kids now.
Hmm.
And I think that's more for me than it is for them.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Absolutely. Yeah.
And I think it's because I can,
Hmm.
where I couldn't before. So
Yes.
like, um back when Jeremy played football, basketball all the time, when he was in school, I always bought him the best of everything, right? I'm the same way with Paisley. She did cheerleading, she plays softball, she's got the best softball bat, the best gloves, best everything. Because I remember as a kid, like I thought the only place you could buy sporting goods stuff was Play It Again Sports.
Yeah. Hmm. Yeah.
I thought that was the only sporting goods store. I
Yeah.
found out when I was a teenager that I'm trying to think, was it Dick's that was around then? I don't
Yeah.
think it was Dick's. I think it was something else.
Models.
Modell's, I think, was probably
Sports Authority.
Sports Authority. That's what it was.
Yeah.
Modell's and Sports Authority were the only thing around, and then Dick's showed up later on. But
Hmm.
um, like I didn't know places like that really existed. I'm like, oh, you could buy that stuff and it's brand new.
Right. Right.
I thought this stuff looked worn out on purpose.
Right. 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 No, dude, and it's funny because like, you know, eh, there's also certain people that throughout my life I also looked at a specific way because they had a specific title. So let me give you an example, right? Like, like all my teachers, right? I looked at them and I'm like, "Oh, you must be a fucking awesome parent. You must be sick, right? Like your kids are probably like on point. They're always like, you know, in the best behavior always, right?" And then like I grew up and then I saw some of my friends become teachers and then I'm like, mm, yeah, no. That
Well,
was
I think that's hilarious that you bring that up because truthfully, um, a lot of my friends and I would say even more of the social circle that I tend to hang out in,
yeah.
which is mainly my neighborhood, they're all teachers,
Mhm.
like a lot of them. And I'm like, wait, you're a teacher?
Right, 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 right.
We're out here partying until 2 o'clock in the morning with the teacher.
Right, exactly,
And then
exactly.
one of them's a teacher that then became involved in town politics. So it's like, okay.
But you see what I mean? Like those are the type of things that you look at now and you're like, well shit, some of those parents that I thought had their shit together when I was a kid definitely do not have their shit together.
I exactly. But I want to circle back for a quick second about my last statement there. I'm in no way talking shit about teachers because I'm here to tell
Oh
you
no.
that I feel like some of the funny ass stuff that I have seen them do, whether it's, whatever it is, um, I think makes them who they are. And all of them are actually fantastic with kids.
Oh no, absolutely. And
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 I think
yeah,
they understand the assignment very well. Let's
they
put it
do.
that way.
No, they do, they do, and, like, like, I definitely wanna clear that up too. I wasn't bashing teachers, like, my mom was a teacher, So I definitely like don't see it that way. Like, like I was thinking more of like the professions, right, that you would normally see not have issues, right? But then now like I look at it and I'm like, oh well shit, if this person who I used to party with and I saw them do some crazy shit is a parent now and they can make it, a lot
I
of
got
people
this
can.
shit.
Right, right, right. Yeah, exactly. But like again, man, like, I think it's a really cool thing to see. I think it's something that, you know, more dads need to talk about this shit,
Right.
man. Like, because like the fear is there. The problem is that we don't like showing it. We don't like to seem like the weak one. We
Oh,
don't like to.
the fear of weakness is real.
Absolutely. I mean, like the thing is that like
Like,
I hear the conversations between mothers, right? Mothers end up like going like, "Fuck, I lost my shit. Like I couldn't handle it. Like I lost the diaper bag. Like my kid, I couldn't change their diaper." And then for a father, like we're usually the ones that are the product of a joke,
right,
but we're the ones that don't bother to really ask for help or don't bother to explain what it is that we really need, right,
right,
out of fatherhood, right? So I think that like this is something that I think we need to do more of. We need to
right,
talk about what those things are. We need to talk about, the fears that we have. We need to talk about what makes a good father, because again, like, the things that we see sometimes is just stuff that we saw on TV, right? And
right.
like that father may be good for that family, but that's not the type of father that I am.
Well, let's be real for a second. Is and I think that maybe this is where me and you have a similar outline of our childhood, but they were made for they were characters on a TV show.
Yeah,
And I
absolutely.
think we may be unfairly basing our opinions on, you know, uh
On these fathers.
yeah,
Look, all I know is that I
Mr.
probably
Winslow.
right, exactly. Hanging with Mr. Cooper.
Right.
Mr. Feeney, that was another good father.
Mr. Feeney,
Uh,
yes.
but but yeah, man, like, like it, again, I think it's okay to talk about these things. It's okay to
Mhm.
talk about, the fear behind it. Like,
And I can
we
tell you, man, like, as we continue this quest, just talking about mental health too, I can honestly say that being a parent's hard,
yes.
mentally, because I think that fear of making the wrong decision, nobody prepared me for that. That you basically live your life, you wake up with it, you go to bed with it, you fear for somebody else's well-being.
Mhm,
You know what I
mhm,
mean? Like, and
mhm,
maybe not all the time, but most of the time.
mhm.
Um, I didn't know that was a thing.
Yeah, yeah.
You know what I mean?
No, absolutely, absolutely. I didn't know either, man. I didn't know that that was a thing either. I mean, these are the type of things that, like, you have to be in it to really understand it,
Mhm.
right? And shit, even till today, I still don't understand it. I'm still figuring that shit out. Um, but no, man. All in all, like I said, I think it's important that we talk about those things. We
Yeah.
talk about what what makes us again human, right? Like I don't have a playbook to be a good father. I just know that the things that work for my kids, right? Just like the things that you've discovered with your kids through the connections that you've made with them, right? With Jeremy, you figured
Uh,
out a way to talk to him, right? With Paisley, you figured out how to connect with her, right? And I'm doing the same thing with my kids. And again, the recipe's not going to be the same,
it's also
but
okay that it's different between each kid.
that
That's another
that
thing that I didn't expect either, is that
yes.
there would be such a differential in the relationship.
Yes,
You
yes,
know what I'm saying?
100%,
It has
100%.
an entirely different feeling to it.
Yes,
Like, on
yes.
one hand, and some of those feelings are confusing. So
Mhm.
there's times where I feel a stronger bond with Jeremy because I've known him longer, but then there's other times where the bond between me and Paisley is stronger than I feel like it is with anybody else.
Right, yes,
You know what I'm
100%.
saying? Like, it's a
Yes.
very weird thing to explain out loud.
It is, it really is. No, 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 you're absolutely right, and, like, people will probably all lump it up to favoritism, but it's not a favoritism thing.
But
It's
at the
it's
same time, knowing both of them the way that I do, they both need a different relationship.
exactly. And I think that that's the part that we as fathers, parents need to understand, right? That like, because at times we tend to do a lot of comparing, right? We compare ourselves to other parents, and like my methods of parenting are way different than somebody else,
Yeah,
right? Like my kids understand that I curse, right? They understand that like I am very straightforward with words, because words are just words and there's meaning behind them, but it all depends on how you say them. But like again, like just because of the fact that I talk to my kids that way, I don't expect other people to talk to their kids that way, or
right.
vice versa, right? So, like again, I think it's important that we as people realize that there are going to be differences. There are going to be things that we tackle differently, we see differently, we're going to grow through that specific topic differently, and that's okay.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, the fact that it's a journey all the way through, and that we're, just by us having this conversation, I've figured some things out, right? Like
Same here.
that's another key part is both of us sit here and we talk these scenarios back and forth, and we learn stuff while we're doing it.
Right,
So
absolutely.
just like you guys at home. So real quick, to throw a shameless plug out there, please subscribe, like the video, throw us some comments, interact, help us with the algorithms, guys, because we want to keep doing this. We want to keep learning these things, and we're hoping that you guys at home are learning them along with us.
Yeah,
um,
and to add on to that too, like we want to know if you find this stuff interesting, right? Like if there's a topic that you want us to discuss, let us know. I mean, like, we talk about these things because there are things that we see that need to be brought up. But if
right.
there are things that you guys feel like we can definitely talk about, let us know. Like,
And
and
I will say that uh, in us being friends, I'm also learning the similarities that you've gone through, that I've gone through, that make it not as bad.
right,
You
yes,
know what I'm saying?
absolutely.
Like, it
Yeah,
kinda
yeah.
makes it like, well, I'm not the only one."
Right, right,
Which,
right.
even if that's just a moment, of that feeling, it's helpful because it
Yes.
allows me to see that, okay, so I'm not the only one that's made this mistake. So clearly there's a way around it, or a way to
Mhm.
not do it again, or a way to keep it from happening, or whatever the case may be, a different way to look at it.
Yes,
And
absolutely.
I think that's hugely important. And I encourage anybody, um, to go out and just talk to somebody, talk to your friend, talk to a complete stranger. Sometimes that's the best thing.
No, absolutely, absolutely. And that's the thing, man. Like, like I want, to the fathers out there, like there's you make a difference, right? Like you make a difference to your child's life. Like,
That
to
and some of the stuff you go through as a dad, mentally over that, it's tough stuff, man. Like
well, and that's what I
it
was gonna
puts you in a
say.
rough spot.
That's what I was gonna say. Like usually, like like we tend to give a lot of credit to the mother, which I don't want to take anything away from that. I think mothers deserve their own credit as well. But like like we tend to talk about how mothers are emotionally supportive, where fathers are the same thing, except that like we may not be the emotional support where we hug you, right? But we're gonna be the emotional support where we're gonna tell you things are gonna be okay, right?
Right.
Like like we may not be
I
the
look at it as the
ones.
difference of, if you fall off your bike and get hurt, your dad's gonna be there to pick you up. Then
Mhm.
your mom's gonna be the one to put band-aids on it and tell you you're okay.
Ap Well said.
You know what I'm
Yes.
saying? Because
Yes.
both are, if you look at it in the long term, like some of the memories that I can look back on, both sides were just as important.
Yes, absolutely.
You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
One doesn't trump the other.
Yes.
It's like
Yes.
when I really needed somebody, my dad was there.
Yeah.
And
No,
then on the flip side, but then my mom made it all better.
right.
You
Yeah,
know what I
yeah, yeah,
mean? Like,
yeah.
even through all the bullshit that I've been through.
No,
Not that it
I
really makes me a bad person. Like, that's the other thing too. I want to make sure that everybody understands, everybody's been through different things in their lives. Everybody's been through different, what they would consider hardships. But just remember, like, without that, who are you?
exactly. You nailed it, dude.
Started
You
from the
nailed it.
bottom, now we're here.
You, dude.
Quote Drake.
You nailed it. You nailed it. So what I've gotten so far, right? Here's my recap for this one, right? My recap is um push a child off a bike. Definitely number 1. Number 2 is listen to Drake. And then no, I'm kidding. I'm kidding, guys. No. Like you're
Guys,
absolutely right, dude.
Nelson's temporarily derailed. We're gonna have to get him back on track here real quick.
Absolutely. Draw me back in. No.
Yeah,
Like, no, I think you said it best, dude. Like, honestly, like, it is something that we don't have an answer for it right off the bat. And it's something that we're gonna figure out. That's what you meant by, started from the bottom. Now we're here, right? Like we're figuring things out. We're piecing the things together. And again, what could have worked for one kid doesn't work for the other. What could have worked in one relationship doesn't work in the other relationship, and we're kind of learning through that. But it's also important that we admit to each other that a father present is just as important as a mother, right? And
I
like
agree.
there are things that, like, a father's going to bring to the table that a mother may not bring, and vice versa. And I think having both is a big piece. For those of you that do not have the capability, or not the capabilities, but you guys don't have the, I guess, the fortune to have both, right? Like I know that some of
I
you
would say that the
either,
situation doesn't warrant it in one way or the other.
yeah,
I don't want it to come across with a with too much of a negative connotation, because I
right.
think it's very possible, because you may find that fatherly relationship with someone completely different in your life.
And that's exactly what I was gonna say, right?
Sorry,
Is the
I didn't
fact,
mean
no,
to
no,
take it away from you, but
no. Please, like I love the fact that you and I are connecting at that level and we see the same thing, right? Because that's exactly how I see it too, is the fact that, like, if you don't have that father figure or mother figure, right? Whatever it is, like if you have those connections with other folks, like build upon those, right? Like I can tell you that one of my strongest connections that I've ever had was with this person that my mother used to watch. He was an older individual. He was like, in his 80s and stuff like that, and like he was a big influence in my life from a male's perspective, right? Like, I mean, like there's a lot of things that I learned from him. And again, he wasn't my father or anything like that, but I learned a lot of things from him. So, I encourage you guys to really, look at those relationships and start to, one, understand what it is that they're trying to teach you, and then two, really take the lessons that were taught to you and analyze them, right? Because they're probably bigger than what you think, and they're probably
they
bigger
could be
than,
completely different than what you think the lesson actually was about, because
exactly, and they could be a lot deeper than what you thought they were in the first place,
right?
right? Like, so it's important that, like, we as people realize that, like, all these things matter. We matter into the mix of different things, right? Like one of the things that I always heard my entire life was, it takes a village, and I still 100% believe in that, right? Like it really does, dude. Like, I mean,
Well,
like,
and I'll
like,
be honest with you, I think it takes a village um, to do it correctly. I
yes,
think part of part of doing it correctly is having your child experience to a wide range of different people that they can then connect with and count on.
yes, yes.
Um, and that's kind of, not to cut you off, but I just, my recap is, parenting is a relationship. It's not as one way as it's portrayed. It is a relationship, and it does take work.
Hmm.
The I don't think, a lot of people are like, oh, we got so lucky, we have a great kid. Well, you're not giving yourself enough credit, because
Right.
your kid's that way because of you.
Hmm.
For the good and for the bad. Your kid is that way because of you, and your kid is that way because of the scenarios and situations that they've been in through some of their life.
100%.
And have that relationship, work on that relationship. If you're not to the point that we're discussing yet, and you feel like you're lost right now, know that it's coming back around.
Hmm.
Know that there is light at the end of the tunnel, that you start to feel this change happen as your children get older. And it's going to happen at different times and different ages for everybody, because everybody's their own individual.
Hmm.
The other thing is too, man, I think I think most importantly, in those times where you don't know what to do what you think's right. Because typically, if there's something that's pulling you to do something in a particular situation, there's got to be some sort of validity behind it.
100%.
You know, you may be that single parent out there that's out there working your ass off trying to support a kid, two kids, three kids, who knows how many kids. Everybody's situation is a little different. Do the best that you can and know that your kids are going to become smart enough one day to figure this shit out for what it really is, and that they're gonna love you for it just the same.
Yes. Yes.
You know, that same feeling that's inside of you is inside of them too. That same feeling where they can never look, never turn their back on you, that, regardless of the scenarios and situations, they're going to love you as you're their parent.
Mhm.
Don't
Mhm.
take advantage of that, but know and understand if you're going through a rough time that, um I think with the right conversations, you can definitely get it back.
I agree wholeheartedly. I don't even think I can add anything to that. I
Yeah,
think that
like
you
I'm kind of out of words,
I think
which
you
is
articulated it really well, dude.
which is
Really well.
different.
No, no, no. And
I usually don't shut up.
no, I thought that was brilliant, dude. I think you summarized that perfectly, and again, the takeaway for this for you guys is, think about those relationships that you've had in your life, both from a female perspective, a male perspective. It doesn't matter. I mean, like the ones that like made an influence on you, like if they're still around, reach out to them and thank them. If they're not around,
I
then
think we don't
carry
do that
carry their
enough either.
legacy. Yeah, we
I
don't.
think we don't go back and kind of relive the past a little bit and
Right.
and recap and give the satisfaction to those people that brought us through those lessons. Man, I have started doing that. I unfortunately I lost both of my grandparents, both of my mom's parents, within a week of each other a couple years ago. And there's so many. It was that, and a couple years before that, I lost my mom, and I felt like there was so much left that I should have said,
Mhm.
and it's really made me interact with some of my family differently
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
go back. Like I had a conversation with my uncle and told him that just some of my thought process about who he was in my life growing up, and he had no idea.
Oh, really?
Like he just never looked at it from that perspective.
Yeah.
Like growing up, my uncle was like my idol. Like I wanted to be that dude. Like that's what I wanted to be. I mean, I know I said I wanted to be MacGyver, but I wanted to be MacGyver that looked like my uncle. You know what I'm saying?
No,
Like I
I
wanted I wanted to be him because he was. So when I was born and me and my mom lived at my grandmother's house, he was only like 13 or 14. So like he was still living at the house, and then I can remember him always being there. And then, dude, he moved out when he was like, I think he was 20
Mhm.
when he moved out of my grandmother's house, and me and my mom were still living there. And I felt like I lost my best friend.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like
No, I
it was a partial father figure because we just did stuff. Like he would take me places probably that I shouldn't have been. He would do things that probably shouldn't do. Like he was the guy you wanted to take you sledding because he was going to take you to the most gnarly badass hill and then build a jump at the bottom of it.
dude, it's so funny that you mentioned that because, like, I mentioned going back home next week, and I'm actually doing that with one of my uncles. Like, I definitely will be doing that because he was an influence on me, right? Like, he was there, when
Well, and don't
when
get me
when a
wrong, my
kid
uncle
needs you
was like,
most.
I know we were cool, we were
Yeah.
buds,
Yeah.
and then I was like, nah, I don't think you understand.
Right.
Like
Right. Right.
you were Superman to me.
Right.
Like
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
were the guy I looked up to every day, all day. It was constantly in my head of I want to be just like my uncle.
And see, and that's what I mean. Like, I'm glad that you took the steps to do that because that's what we should be doing. We should be like letting people know that they did a good job on us, right? Like, because again, like there is no book that tells us whether or not we did a good job, right?
Well, and
All we know is that you're alive, so we kind of feel like we did a good job, but there's no validation to it until you actually tell that person, and then you're like, you know what, like what you did for me was huge, and I would not
Right.
be here if it wasn't for you. That I think is the part that we need to practice more. So,
Absolutely. Because I think those conversations are key. Like
yes,
I know that I'm excited for more people reaching out to me about that. I think that's what I'm looking for as a success meter
yeah, yeah,
or some kind of metric.
yeah,
You know what I mean? Do I have anybody
absolutely.
like that that I've affected? Hopefully.
Right, right, and that's where, like, and it might not be something that I affected them today, but,
It might
maybe
not have happened yet.
yeah, maybe 10, 20 years down the line, somebody's gonna come up to me and, like, I welcome that conversation. Like,
Absolutely.
that would be awesome. Like I said,
I'm looking forward to it.
I'm doing it now, right? Because again, I'm realizing that there's certain people in my life that have done that for me. So I'm currently doing that. But like I said, I think the takeaway here is, reach out to those people that took care of you. Reach out and let them know that you care about them. You're still thinking about them. Let them know that the things that they did for you really did make an impact, and that you're passing on some of those things to the people that right. And again, like, it doesn't even have to be the fact that you have your own kids to do that. Again, like, it takes a village. These are the type of things that, like, like, for me, I'm grateful when people correct my kids, right? Like, I also don't want you to be a dick about it, because again, they're
Right.
my precious things. But
Right.
like, but if they're not doing the right thing, like, it's okay, correct them, right?
Call
Like,
them out.
yeah, like, I want them to be good human beings. I want them to be, looked upon with respect. I don't want them to be assholes. So if you don't tell them, or I don't tell them, then they're just gonna grow up to be shitty people overall, and we don't
Right.
want those at all. So,
And one last thing, if any of you guys at home are watching this and you are a dad in a family that is not, you know, conventional or a family that is not together, um my little piece of advice, don't stop. Don't let
yes.
anything stop you.
Yes.
Because I've made that mistake for us already. I've let things get in the way and I have a lot of regrets when it comes to that.
Mhm.
Reach out to your kid. Work on your relationship with your kid.
Yes.
And that's something that I think that nobody really talks about, right? Like fathers, mothers, kids in homes that are not together. I think it can be done. I'm not judging you for that, because a lot of times that split is to prevent the child from going through bad situations, right?
Mhm, mhm.
But just know, like, your kids are smart. Your kids genuinely love their parents. Like it's they don't hate you as much as you think they do. And you're
Right.
probably beating yourself up more than you should, but go out there and prove to yourself that you're not going to be the guy you don't want to be.
Mhm,
You know what I'm
mhm.
saying? Like the
Yeah.
phone calls, the real conversations. Like that's something too that I struggled with, is to talk to my son on the phone and not just ask, how's school, how's things going, hanging out with your friends, playing basketball, how's football, how's the like that's not what I'm talking about. Like, hey, what are you up to? Like, what are
Right.
you doing?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
then get involved. Like, I mean, don't get me wrong, it was an easy thing because I like video games. My son likes video games. We did that together, but it could be something completely weird. Do what they're into.
Yes.
Put your phone down, disconnect a little bit, and just be involved with them. Even if you don't have an idea what you're doing, or it doesn't matter. They're not looking at you to be the knower of all things, but get on their level and get interested, or at least try
Mhm.
something that they're into to spend that time. And I gotta say, there's another piece to this too. A lot of times early on in the breakup, it's very rough for both parents individually and the child. It gets better.
Mhm.
It You get to the point where the hurt between the parents no longer affects what you're willing to do for your child. At least you should, in my opinion, get to that point. And if you're not quite there yet, just know that that's probably a good place to start. Stop
Absolutely.
basing your relationship with your child on the other parent. Have a relationship with your child that has no holds barred, no, no limits to it. Um, without, I don't want to say without thought of the other parent, because you should be respectful, but teach your kid how you would want them to handle it if they were in the situation.
Yeah, yeah,
You
yeah,
know what I'm
yeah,
saying?
yeah,
Like,
yeah.
and because I know that there's a lot of dads that struggle with that. Like, dads get labeled the piece of shit all the time, no matter what. And I think it's just a societal thing.
Mhm.
Um, I think that there's a lot of times where dads are lost. They're just stuck where they don't know what to do to not have everybody, and they run around trying to do those little individual things when really just focus on your kid, man. Like, if I would have done that sooner, I feel like I'd be farther along than I am right now.
Absolutely, absolutely. And the one thing I'm gonna add to everything you just said, 'cause it's you nailed it with what you just said. The other thing is, again, remember that it's okay for you to talk to other dads about this situation. That's the thing that, like, we need to
Dude,
break that
third
shit.
party advice is amazing.
Yeah, like, we need to break
'Cause
that shit because
sometimes you can't pull your head out of the weeds far enough to see the answer that's right in front of you.
exactly, exactly. So, it's okay for you to reach out. It's okay for you to be vulnerable. It's okay for, like, again, I don't have my shit together when it comes to my kids. I'm learning this shit. So, just because, like, to the outside world it may seem like I have the shit on lock with my kids. I'm not. I'm learning every day, right? And like Brandon said, like, disconnect. And what we mean by truly disconnect is that, like, some people always go like, well, like, I have ice cream with my kid every Tuesday. That's great for you and the kid. I'm pretty sure they're enjoying the ice cream, but there's a big difference between eating ice cream on Tuesday and actually enjoying the ice cream on Tuesday. And what I'm talking about that is that, like, you put your phone down and you talk about the ice cream with your kid, right? That's your conversation starter, right?
Right.
um Talk to them about what's important to them, right? Listen to their statements for the behavioral aspects of them, not necessarily just the words. Because again, that's one thing that I've learned with my kids is that, like, sometimes they say things, but they're not really saying what they really mean, right? Like, I
Right.
have to kind of read them a little bit. So and that's okay to do. And again, find a support system, whatever that may be. Like, I grew up with the fact that I had to be a dad by myself. I had to figure this shit out. And, through conversations with different dads, Brandon being one of them, like, I have some other friends that I reach out to that I'm just like, hey, like, do you deal with this shit? Right? Like,
Right.
that's
And it's
normal for you to do.
and dude, I want you to know that every time that I have, uh however you want to explain it, stood up, put my pride aside, and asked those questions, I've gotten positive answers and feedback,
Hmm.
because somebody, or at least I've gotten, yeah, I've been through that too, and I struggle with it, and I think I screw it up, but this is what I do.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah,
then
yeah.
it's like, okay, well, if we're screwing it up, we're screwing it up together because we're both doing the same stuff.
Right, right.
So, and I don't think we can all screw it up at the same time. I think that's just mathematically impossible.
I agree there. I agree
So,
100%. So no, guys, again,
and
like,
definitely hit us up if you guys got a story that kind of falls along the lines of this. If you guys have questions you think that we could answer, if you guys have questions about the stuff that we talked about today, or shared with you today on a personal level, if you want to know more details, that way it might help you in the future, and you just want to do it anonymously, hit us up at info@dadmandude.net. um, Drop us an email, dear dads, dear men, dear dudes, whatever you want to put it, parenting question,
yeah,
throw it in the subject line. Let's talk about it, because I mean, I also struggled for a while not knowing who to ask.
yeah,
So I
yeah,
mean, we're throwing it out here. You can ask us. We might know the answer, we might not. um and we'll at least be straight up with you.
yeah, exactly, exactly. No, and if info at dadmandude.net is not your avenue, again, you can reach us out at, on the YouTube channel. You can post your questions there. You can hit us up through that as well. Um, we
Facebook,
appreciate.
Twitter, Instagram.
Absolutely.
You name
Absolutely.
it, we're there. Check us out,
Yep.
support us.
Yep.
Um, hit us up on any of the messaging platforms. You will get one of us that will answer. Specify in there if you want an answer from both, and we'll make it happen.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know,
Absolutely. Absolutely.
because we're here
So
for you guys just as much as we're here for ourselves.
100%. 100%. So, like, subscribe, keep supporting us. We appreciate those of you that have supported us. If you could spread the word, that would be awesome.
Yeah,
Otherwise, we appreciate your time and we'll catch you on the next one.
yeah. Dad's out.
Peace.